today I'm trying to help you guys think about these best ball tournaments a little bit differently and hopefully give you a strategy to help you win some serious money in some best ball tournaments this year. So do me a favor, drop a like to show some love, subscribe if you like fantasy football, and I want you to comment down below, where do you play best ball? Is it Underdog, FanDuel, DraftKings? Where are you playing best ball at the moment? If you use our code at Underdog, use our code LAND, L-A-N-D. There's a link in the description and the pinned comment to sign up. Then our code will let you get your deposit matched up to $100. So if you deposit $100, you get $100. And by the way, if you use that same promo code on Flock Fantasy to unlock a membership there, you'll get an extra $10 for free. All you got to do is go to your account settings and put your username in on Underdog. So you could potentially be looking at $110 free if you use our codes across the two platforms. So let's get into some context of the video because I believe it's important. In best ball tournaments, okay, tournaments specifically, you should approach team building very differently to how you would in, let's say, a 12-man redraft in-season league, okay? These are not the same strategies. You should not be drafting the same teams. Why? Well, think about it. In your 12-man home league or in a league with friends, you have 11 opponents, right? Ton of knowledge there. Thanks, Zach. That's what you're saying to me right now. But in Best Ball Mania, for example, which is Underdog's biggest best ball tournament, you don't have 11 opponents. You have 677,375 opponents. In the Dalmatian tourney they put on and the Chihuahua, you have over 3,000 opponents. So in these scenarios where we're facing a much bigger pool of competition, you need to slightly alter the way you think so you can hit and make money when it really matters. I prefer Underdog, but let's say you draft on FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever the case may be. All of these tournaments, the big money is won in week 17. So let's talk about week 17. For example, in Best Ball Mania, you have 4 rounds that you go through. Okay, the first round, week 1 to 14. Rounds 2 is week 15. Round 3 is week 16. And then round 4 is week 17. That's 441 people who are remaining all in one group. And round 4, week 17 is where the big money is made. That's where you start to make the thousands to the millions in cash prize money. So how can we get an advantage? If the big money is won in week 17, how can we get an advantage in those best ball tournaments? If it's go big or go home, I don't want to win 25 bucks. I want to win thousands. I want to win 50,000. I want to win $1 million. How can you potentially get an advantage over your opponents? Well, I have some advice for you, and I have a strategy that I have been using myself, and that is to target shootout matchups in week 17. We want to target players who are in games that could be absolute shootouts. You know, your 45 to 42 type of games, your 38 to 30 type of games. So what I did is I reviewed all of the week 17 matchups, and I determined, in my personal opinion, and I'll tell you why, the best matchups to chase and draft players in. These matchups are showtime, big names, big money on the line, and I think there'll be a ton of offensive firepower. So I'm going to rank those matchups from 5 to 1. I'll tell you how you can get an advantage with these matchups, and we'll look at stacks and correlations from each of these matchups. And you're asking yourself, maybe, what's a stack? Well, stack would be having the quarterback 1 and then someone else on that team. So let's say you had Jalen Hurts for the Eagles. Well, Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown is a quarterback 1 and a wide receiver 1 stack. Let's say you had Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith. That is a quarterback 1 and a wide receiver 2 stack. Okay, so let's say in week 17, if Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith go absolutely nuclear, that's going to be really good for you if you have that specific stack in a tournament like this. Correlation just means having players in the same games that you think could be shootouts. Because, okay, if that player is going to score a bunch of points, that means the players on the other side of the field probably have to put up a lot of points themselves. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if there's any comments or questions in the comments below. But let's go ahead and get to my top 5 matchups to target in best ball leagues. and tournaments specifically. So at number 5, I want to target the Packers at Vikings in week 17. That is a Sunday night football game, so it'll be prime time. It's a divisional game, and both of these teams could be fighting for the playoffs. Last year, the Vikings were 8th in points per game amongst the NFL. The Packers were 14th. Now, obviously, they've lost Aaron Rodgers, but they still have a lot of explosive weapons on that offense. So what are the players that you want to target here in a game that could be high scoring? Well, with the Vikings, can you stack? Maybe you're not able to stack Jefferson with Cousins because you don't have the 101, but can you stack Cousins and Jordan Addison? Can you stack Cousins and TJ Hawkinson? Maybe you could even go Cousins as your quarterback too and get KJ Osborne later on in your draft. Or if you're with the Packers, can you get Christian Watson and Jordan Love? Can you get Jaden Reed later on at wide receiver 70 and Jordan Love? I mean, what's the possibility that Jaden Reed has a breakout game, scores 2 touchdowns because the Vikings are putting up huge points and you are a beneficiary of that because you have Jordan Love and Jaden Reed. Now, of course, what I'm not telling you right now is that I can predict in the future in week 17 that Addison and Kirk Cousins will be the number 1 combo in fantasy, right? I can't tell you that, but the key to these sort of tournaments is drafting multiple teams and playing out scenarios that could happen. There's a chance that Kirk Cousins goes nuclear in week 17 with this matchup. There's a chance that you have Aaron Jones and you have Justin Jefferson. There's a chance that both of those players could be absolutely incredible. Maybe the Vikings are up by 30 points and the Packers need to pass the ball to Aaron Jones 13 times to get, into the game. So that's the first matchup that I would target. It's not the strongest. I think I feel much better about matchups 3-1, but let's talk about number 4, which is the Chargers at the Broncos. This is a divisional game. Both teams could be fighting for the playoffs. I mean, let's be honest, the Chargers, they're always fighting for the playoffs. So they could definitely be all in week 17. But the last year, the Chargers were 12th in points per game. Now you add Quentin Johnston, the Broncos, one of the worst offenses in the NFL, but you add Sean Payton. These could be 2 high scoring offenses here in week 17. Don't force it, obviously. But there's a scenario in which you can get Jerry Jeudy as your wide receiver 2 or 3, and then later on, Russell Wilson, stack those guys. Russell Wilson can be your quarterback too. And maybe your quarterback 1 dominates, but here in week 17, Russell Wilson and Jerry Jeudy, like they did last year, go for a huge fantasy performance. Hey, maybe you miss out on Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, but you can get Justin Herbert and Quentin Johnston or Justin Herbert and Gerald Everett. Regardless, you want to target players in this game. In a Superflex tourney, could Justin Herbert and Russell Wilson both be top 5? Who would benefit in week 17 if they were? Draft accordingly, right? Get some sort of correlation on your team in that matchup. By the way, just before I get on to this next matchup that I love, I actually wrote an article about this on Flock Fantasy. If you want to go check it out, you get a 2-day free trial with our code LAND. There's a pinned comment in the description, but let's get to this next team. The following matchups are my top 3, and I feel very confident about drafting as many players as I can with different types of builds with these teams. All right, the third one for me would be the Dolphins at the Ravens. In the AFC, both of these teams, this will mean a lot to them. None of these teams are going to be sitting anyone. I mean, they're going to be all guns blazing with these teams fighting for the last spot in the playoffs. 2 explosive offenses. The Dolphins, you have Tua, you have Tyreek, you have Waddle, you have Devon Achane. With the Ravens, you got Lamar, you got Mark Andrews, OBJ, Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. And ask yourself, in this game, you want a lot of stock in this game. You really do, because if Lamar dominates, which we saw a lot of teams dominate, I know Jalen Ramsey is there, but if Lamar dominates, who's going to benefit? Well, it's probably Mark Andrews. It's probably OBJ. It's probably Rashad Bateman. What about Tua Tagovailoa? If he goes out and puts up a 40 burger on the Ravens, who's going to benefit from that? Probably Tyreek Hill. Probably Jalen Waddle. I remember there's a team I just drafted today before I made this where I stacked Tua Tagovailoa with Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane. And then I also on that team had Mark Andrews as my tight end, trying to get some correlation. And in that team, in that specific Best Ball Mania team, I'm betting on that to be a huge game, a shootout game. And if it is, that team has a really good chance to advance if it makes it to week 17. Now, you guys have to hear what I'm saying. I'm not saying you only draft stacks. I'm not saying you reach drastically for stacks or drastically for a correlation. What I'm saying is there are strategic ways for you to say, okay, maybe, yeah, there's a 5-place difference in ADP, but I'm on the edge and I can go ahead and get this stack. I can go ahead and get these 2 players who could absolutely dominate. And one of my absolute favorite matchups we'll talk about here at number 2 is the Lions at the Cowboys. And when I talk about correlation, one of my favorite starts in Best Ball Mania's drafts right now is at the 12 spot, getting CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown. In week 17, the Lions at the Cowboys, both offenses that were top 5 in the NFL last year in scoring. I mean, could you imagine in week 17 having Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb versus defenses that gave up a lot of points last year? I know it's different teams, but you could have Amon-Ra and CeeDee go for 30 points each. Like, it's a very realistic possibility. I love starting my Best Ball Mania drafts with CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's an incredible 1-2 punch. And not only can you get that correlation between those wide receivers, if CeeDee does well, probably Amon-Ra is going to be forced to do well, right? Because of the flow of the game. But not only can you have that correlation, you can easily get a stack. You can easily wait to get Dak Prescott and Jared Goff later on in your draft. That can be your quarterback 1 and 2. You can wait till round 9 and then establish those guys as your stack. I love this matchup. I love targeting it. Other ways I've targeted it is getting Tony Pollard as my RB1/2 and then Montgomery as my RB3. I like that correlation. So this is a matchup that I think should be high scoring. If you have the right players in this matchup, there's no reason you can't get, big money in week 17 if you make it. I mean, even as small as getting a Marvin Jones last pick. You have Jared Goff on your team, get a Marvin Jones last pick. Marvin Jones is very capable of having these random 2-touchdown games, or Michael Gallup for that matter. So I love this matchup. It's a Monday Night Football game. Should be well-rested teams with high-powered offenses. I am so excited, and it's not even anywhere close to the season for that matchup in particular because of the stock I have in best ball tournaments for players in that matchup. And the number 1 matchup that you should be targeting players in is the Bengals at the Chiefs. The heated rivalry, always a high-scoring affair. 2 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL on each side. They hate each other. They want to put up big points on each side. Last year, both teams were top 7 in points per game. The Chiefs were actually number 1. Get as many players as you can in this game, okay? Can I stack Kelsey and Mahomes in the first 2 rounds? Yeah. Don't love going quarterback in the first 2 rounds, but if you build out, the team after that and get some nice stacks, get an MVS, later on down the road, you could be looking at a huge matchup here in week 17. Can I stack Burrow and Chase? Can I stack Burrow and T. Higgins? Can I get Burrow and then get Boyd later on? I mean, Boyd is always one of those wide receivers, especially versus Kansas City, who can pop off for 20, 30 points. Can I draft Joe Mixon as my RB2 and Jerick McKinnon as my RB5? There's a chance that both of those guys go off because both of these offenses are succeeding. Anything is possible. What you want is players in good games. You want skin in games that could be absolutely explosive because, I don't care about winning $25. I don't think you care about winning $25. In these tournaments, we want thousands. We want hundreds of thousands. We want millions. So you have to target those players who could go off for your teams. So I know this is a longer video. Oh, actually, it's not that long, only about 15 minutes. But I hope it makes sense. I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from. Again, it's quite simple. These matchups are matchups that I could see a ton of fantasy points coming from. Now, if all the money is won on that week, don't you want a lot of players in those specific matchups? That's exactly what I'm thinking. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything, or if there's another matchup that you prefer. And yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. So all love, drop a like to show some love, subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys in the next video. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.